Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Khorasan, the Caliph and the Corruptor. This is the second episode of the War on Terra, where we are thinking about ways that there is a war upon the earth and its ecosystems and its peoples and creatures. That is a total, comprehensive, full spectrum attack on all aspects of life. This is related to the cosmic court case, Iblis versus Adam alayhi salam and his progeny. Now we'll explain that in another episode shortly, inshallah. But for now, let's discuss some ways that there is a war on Terra, meaning Earth. Now, in the previous episode, I mentioned that the Earth is not just the soil all around us and the sacred clay that is created by Kun, of sacred living water and sacred soil, all Kun created. But it also includes our very bodies. Our bodies, we can communicate and connect to all of creation through this Kun created clay, through this Kun created sacred soil and Kun created sacred living water. And this is connected to the Ruh, which we are soaked in Ruh. And so right now, let's discuss the war on Terra, meaning a war on Earth and all forms of life, as it impacts the world around us and ourselves. So one aspect of it, so we think about the various elements. I will be more systematic and detailed in the near future, inshallah, with more clear examples. I'm just going to freestyle this to get us thinking about this. So for instance, consider that we have been in a world war since at least the early 20th century. Non-stop war. There's actually conflict going back even further than that. That's high tech. All war and all conflict is a form of blood sacrificial ritual that involves symbolism, that involves sacrifice of blood to deities, to false deities, in exchange for various benefits that the so-called cream of the crop of humanity, the sellouts, receive. Those who are supposed to be the protectors, guardians, and guides of humanity, the shepherds of humanity, but they sold us out long ago. So these world conflicts involved, there was some kind of an exchange and development of technology. So we can think on the chemical and the biological levels, we can think of the nuclear levels, etc. So for instance, just on that, consider that every single experiment, like an experimental explosion of nuclear devices in the atmosphere, inside the Earth and in the oceans, is always an act of war, 100% of the time. It is not a test. These are not tests. These are not done in laboratory conditions on small scale. All of our world is deeply interconnected and interdependent. All of creation is. And everything that impacts the exterior world impacts us as individuals. And we feel it. We're very sensitive creatures. Very sensitive creations. We've been designed that way. It's a very brilliant design, subhanAllah. And we are very connected to all of nature. We are to be, in our spiritually mature forms, the caliphs of the earth, the protectors, the guardians, the guides of all of creation. So let's just consider some aspects. So I mentioned, so if you've got explosions of nuclear in the atmosphere, inside the earth, in the ocean, it's negatively impacting all of the ecosystems. The very creation of these dirty substances is toxic for tens of thousands of years, is what they say, and maybe more. This is never healthy for there's zero benefit that comes from it. And if you've got power stations built from it, they're creating dirty things, and it's automatically a problem for all humans and all creatures. If something goes wrong, like what we saw in I'm trying to think about the place in the Ukraine-Russian area off top, or we think about Fukushima. So we've got a number of instances of major accidents that have had thankfully they weren't worse than they were, but they had a negative impact on all ecosystems in the region and beyond. And who knows to what extent they compromised our biological genetic integrity and our interconnectivity. Also, every single time there's a war and there's a massive bombardment of the land, what it's doing is we are created by sound, kun, and it is. Everything is vibration and frequency. We are all creatures of water. And so therefore, every time there is bombardment and hundreds of bombs are dropped or more, then that's negative. That's not only engaging, it's a sonic warfare, it's a vibratic warfare on all the ecosystems. It impacts all creatures. It creates tremendous fear and destruction, and also the letting of blood, which is a type of blood sacrifice. If the leadership dedicates that toward certain goals and ambitions, including to other types of beings like shayateen, etc., then it counts as blood sacrifice, especially if they use certain symbology and certain ritual mantras and enactments and chantings in a systematic manner. And war is very systematic. So we've got these instances. Chemical weapons automatically impact everything in it, the water table, the water supply, all creatures that are made from water, all biological organisms, because we're so interconnected. That's why right now there's this whole thing for climate, climate change and protecting climate. What they do is they flip things that have truth in them in a dirty way. So yeah, there is a climate crisis. It's them. They created it. And then they blamed it on us, and they're having us take the blame upon ourselves. Astaghfirullah, it's dirty deeds. It's devilry. And this is all deception and lies, and we have to be very aware of this and very wary. So these chemical weapons and biological weapons that were tested and rolled out during World War I, including Jabiru's, that was related to the Spanish flu. These kind of things were all forms of war on humanity and on the ecosystems that we are part of and that we are commanded to protect. We are not to dominate and own creatures and others. That is not our way. That is a lie. And there has been infiltration of every single religion, every single group of people. So we have to consider how this infiltration is manifested through scholars and priesthoods. And there are various kinds of scholars and priesthoods. Their authority, it's authority. And they toxify our ecosystems and toxify our minds through mind control. So they have been systematically poisoning the seas, the rivers, the freshwater table. They've been poisoning the soils through fertilizers and pesticides and fungicides, etc. That are all, many of them are derived from World War I, from World War I, when they were doing experiments that they used as warfare, chemical warfare, biological warfare on human beings, which also impacted, the horses, the cattle, the water streams, the water tables, the soils, up to now. Matter of fact, a lot of the landmines, they've continued, even what they make them in, it depletes into the system, and it causes various cancers and illnesses, neurological damage over many decades. And then they make money on the other side on insurance policies, on on pharmaceuticals, medical industry. They're making money all around, but it's not just money. Money is kind of a form of condensed energy, and so it's a way of enslaving the world and genociding the world. All for it because they believe their goal is to become gods, and they've been promised godhood. But it's a lie, and they will be betrayed by their benefactors, who have nothing beneficial about them. So just consider that. So for instance, many products that we use, like the things that supposedly clean our water, the chlorine, that was used as chemical warfare during World War I. We see the same thing from World War II, various experimentations on us through these. That's an internal war on our bodily ecosystems, and it also, everything that impacts the body impacts the mind. Like after 9/11, people went on massive amounts of pharmaceuticals, and this was very important for the mind control program leading up to the current event, because people had to have their intuition dampened and dulled through fluoride, through chlorine, through various substances, bromide, bromine, all these chemicals that are put into our foods. They've been heavily taking the meat that we've been convinced to become addicted to meat. And the animals that we're eating are grown and live in very unethical, impure conditions. The entire process, they are heavily immunized, They are, antibiotics, pharmaceuticals. They're in closed conditions. Then their outputs, their hormonal chemical outputs, get embedded in the flesh, and then you eat the flesh and you feel stress, anger, rage, sadness, depression. The foods that are genetically modified, and then these animals are also genetically modified, and then the plants that they eat are genetically modified. And then there's so anyway, all of these things they come together to form a holistic, shadow side of holistic approach to devastating us. They're destroying us through our toothpaste, through our mouthwash, through our food, through our drinking water, our bathing water, our body products. It's a holistic approach to destroy us. Why? Because we are organic beings that are intended to be in harmony with our environments, with all of creation. We are the protectors of all creatures. And really consider that maybe your meat eating is designed to destroy you and to destroy us. And that's why people are magnetic now. Partly it's not just these. It's also what they've been eating. It's in the flesh that they're eating. These are the flesh pots of the Egyptians that Bani Israel desired to go back. They would be willing to go back into slavery to eat flesh pots, to eat the meat in abundance, rather than to live in a state of tawakkul, in a state of harmony and flow state as they were making hijrah toward a final destination. So just consider that there is a war that impacts us individually and collectively as humans, as well as all of the environments we are called to protect. Their solutions are fake solutions. There is a real problem, but it was caused by them in the first place. They're controlling the weather. They're controlling everything, but they're not controlling everything. They desire to, but they convince us, and then that's psychological war. All right, so I just wanted to give us a brief overview of things, an attack on, a biological attack on us, a chemical attack, a nuclear attack, an atomic and genetic attack on our species. So we'll get back into this in the next episode, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.